I'm Clara, 32, female, and my fiancé told thousands of people online that he was only marrying me for my money and had no love or respect for me. That single, public confession, wrapped in a smug laugh and delivered to a digital audience of strangers, was the detonation that vaporized the future I was meticulously planning. It turns out, the man I was building a life with saw me not as his partner, but as his winning lottery ticket. Our story, or what I thought was our story, began in a place far from the glitz and toxicity of social media. We met at a local coffee shop. I was buried in code, debugging a persistent glitch in an app I was developing, and he was, in his words, curating his digital brand. I remember looking up from my laptop, my eyes sore from staring at lines of text and seeing him. Leo was radiant. He had that effortless charm that seemed to draw all the light in the room toward him. He was 26 at the time, 4 years my junior, and full of a vibrant energy that felt like a perfect counterbalance to my quiet, focused nature. He approached me, commenting on the sheer number of open tabs on my browser, and with a dazzling smile, he asked if I was trying to hack the planet. It was a cheesy line, but it made me laugh. For the next hour, we talked. I spoke about my passion for creating elegant, user-friendly software solutions, and he talked about his dream of building a community online, of becoming a lifestyle influencer. I found his ambition fascinating, a different kind of creative drive from my own. When I left the coffee shop that day, I had his number and a feeling of effervescent hope that I hadn't felt in a very long time. For the first year, things were idyllic. My app was still a passion project, funded by my steady but modest salary as a senior developer for a tech firm. We lived in my small but comfortable apartment. Leo was working part-time in retail, and his influencer journey was in its infancy. He'd post pictures of our weekend hikes, the meals he'd cook, and his outfit of the day. I was his supportive girlfriend, his biggest fan, and his amateur photographer. I loved his creative spirit and his unyielding belief that he could make a career out of his personality. The shift was subtle at first. It began about 18 months ago when my life changed overnight. The app I had been pouring my heart and soul into, a productivity tool designed to streamline project management for creative professionals, was acquired by a major tech conglomerate. The sale wasn't just successful, it was life-altering. Suddenly, I went from being a comfortable software engineer to being genuinely wealthy. I quit my job to manage my new assets and explore my own future projects. And the first thing I wanted to do was build a beautiful life with Leo. That's when the first red flag, one I so blissfully ignored, appeared. We started looking for a house. I wanted something cozy and private, a modern craftsman-style home with a big backyard, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. Leo, however, had other ideas. He started showing me listings for sprawling, ostentatious mansions in the most exclusive parts of the city. "Clara, honey, think of the content," he'd say, scrolling through photos of marble foyers and infinity pools. "This isn't just a house, it's a backdrop. It's a statement. It tells people we've arrived." "But I've arrived," I'd gently counter. "And I've arrived at a place where I want peace and quiet, not a backdrop." We eventually compromised on a beautiful modern home that had a wow factor for him and enough privacy for me. But I paid for it, all of it. The down payment, the closing costs, everything. Leo, whose income was still negligible, promised to contribute in other ways, by managing the home and helping his own brand grow, which he argued would eventually become a second income stream for our family. It sounded reasonable at the time. I was in love, and I wanted to be a supportive partner. The second red flag was the car. I drove a reliable 3-year-old sedan that was perfectly functional. The day after we closed on the house, Leo started talking about how my car didn't fit our new image. He created a whole presentation, complete with a slideshow, on why we needed a pair of luxury European cars. He'd already picked them out. "It's about brand synergy, Clara," he explained, his eyes alight with passion. "When people see us, they need to see success. It inspires them. It helps my channel grow." I gave in. It felt easier than arguing. Soon, a gleaming black SUV for me and a sporty silver coupe for him were sitting in our new 3-car garage. I felt a small, uneasy knot in my stomach as I signed the paperwork, a feeling I quickly pushed aside. I told myself this was just part of his process, part of the world he was trying to build. I loved him, so I should support his dreams. The third and most telling example, the one that I truly have no excuse for ignoring, was the wedding planning. After he proposed on a lavish trip to Italy that I had, of course, paid for, he presented me with a stunning 4-carat diamond ring. I was breathless, not just from the proposal, but from the sheer size of the stone. I later discovered it had cost more than my first car. When I expressed my shock, he just smiled. "Only the best for my queen," he'd said. "We have to show the world how much I love you." But his version of love seemed to be measured in dollars. I wanted a small, intimate ceremony with our closest friends and family. Leo wanted a televised spectacle. He argued for a 500-person guest list, a celebrity wedding planner, and exclusive media rights. Every conversation about the wedding became a negotiation. My desire for a personal, meaningful day was constantly pitted against his desire for a public, brand-building event. My best friend, Sarah, a pragmatic financial advisor who had helped me navigate the windfall from my app, saw it all with painful clarity. "Clara, are you sure about this?" she asked me one evening over dinner, a week before the fateful livestream. "It just feels like he's spending your money to build his future, not our future." "He's just excited, Sarah," I said, defending him out of habit. "This is all new to him, to both of us. He expresses his happiness through extravagance. It's just how he is." Sarah just shook her head slowly, a sad, knowing look in her eyes. "Love shouldn't feel like a business transaction," she said softly. I brushed her concerns aside, dismissing them as the cynicism of a friend who had never seen me so happy. I was so caught up in the whirlwind of my love for Leo, so blinded by the perfect future I had constructed in my mind, that I couldn't see the truth. I was the architect of my own life, a woman who had built a fortune from logic and code, yet I was willingly ignoring the most obvious bug in my own system. I was in love with a man who loved my bank account. And the proof was about to be broadcast to the world. The week leading up to the incident was a flurry of activity, a perfect storm of distractions that kept my focus anywhere but where it should have been. Wedding planning was in full swing, a behemoth of guest lists, floral arrangements, and venue contracts that Leo navigated with the strategic intensity of a military general. He had taken over the majority of the planning, a move he framed as him taking the stress off my shoulders. In reality, it gave him unilateral control over the budget and the aesthetic, which was growing more grandiose by the day. On Monday, he spent 6 hours on a video call with a lighting designer, debating the merits of warm versus cool uplighting for the reception hall. "It's all about the ambience, honey," he called out to me from his home office, a room I had designed for my own quiet work, but which he had quickly commandeered as his content creation studio. "The photos will be epic. Our wedding will be the gold standard." Meanwhile, I was immersed in a different kind of project. I had decided to fund a scholarship program for young women from low-income areas who wanted to pursue careers in technology. It was the first major philanthropic endeavor I had undertaken since selling my company, and it felt deeply personal and important. My days were filled with meetings with university administrators, lawyers to draft the charter, and the heartfelt task of defining the selection criteria. I was building a legacy, something meaningful that would outlast me. I felt a profound sense of purpose, a quiet joy that was a world away from Leo's frantic pursuit of public validation. This divergence in our daily lives had become more pronounced. I would spend my day discussing endowment funds and curriculum support, and I'd come home to find Leo agonizing over which brand of champagne to feature in his next post. The disconnect was jarring. I'd try to talk to him about the scholarship, about the incredible potential of the young women we could help, and he would nod, his eyes glazed over, before seamlessly pivoting the conversation back to himself. "That's amazing, Clara. So proud of you," he'd say, his attention already drifting back to his phone. "Hey, check this out. My post about the new espresso machine got over 10,000 likes. A brand wants to send me a free coffee grinder. We're building momentum. I told myself it was fine. We were a team, and we each had our own projects. His work was just as valid as mine, I reasoned, just in a different sphere. I was so committed to the idea of being a supportive partner that I refused to acknowledge the growing emptiness in our interactions. Our conversations had become two separate monologues occurring in the same room. On Thursday, 2 days before the livestream, Leo announced he was going to do a special Ask Me Anything session with his followers. He was buzzing with an almost manic energy. "This is going to be huge," he said, pacing round the kitchen as I was making dinner. "It's a guys' night in theme. I've got my friend Mark coming over. We'll have some drinks, answer questions from the audience. It's all about being authentic, raw, and real. That's what the people want." "Sounds fun," I said, genuinely happy for his excitement. "Do you need any help setting up?" I want the lighting to be perfect," he said, flashing that brilliant smile that always made my heart skip a beat. So I spent an hour with him in his studio, adjusting ring lights and checking camera angles. I helped him position a small table with a bottle of expensive whiskey, a gift from a brand sponsor, and 2 crystal glasses. The whole setup looked incredibly professional, like a miniature talk show set. As I looked at him sitting there, practicing his intro to the camera, I felt a familiar surge of pride. He was chasing his dream with such tenacity. How could I not support that? "You're going to be great," I told him, giving him a kiss on the cheek. "I have a late-night call with the legal team for the Scholarship Foundation, so I'll probably be in my office for a while. Just knock if you need anything." "No problem. Thanks, honey. You're the best," he said, his focus already on the glowing screen of his monitor. I was dismissed. As I walked to my own office at the other end of the house, I felt a pang of loneliness. It was a strange feeling to have in a house shared with the man I was going to marry in 3 months. I pushed it down, attributing it to pre-wedding jitters and the stress of my own work. I settled into my chair, opened my laptop, and dove into the legal jargon of the Foundation's charter. The world of contracts and clauses was my comfort zone. It was logical, clear, and unambiguous. Unlike the man in the room down the hall. For the next few hours, I was completely absorbed. I was on a conference call, hashing out the final details, feeling that deep satisfaction of bringing a complex project to life. Around 10 p.m., I heard a burst of loud laughter from Leo's studio, followed by the muffled sound of his animated voice. I smiled to myself, thinking his live stream must be going well. I pictured him there, charming his audience, building his community. I was proud of him. I was a fool. The house grew quiet around midnight. My call had ended, and I stretched, my back stiff from sitting for so long. I assumed Leo and his friend had wrapped up and were probably just relaxing. I decided to finish one last review of the charter before calling it a night. I was so close to my goal, so close to launching a program that could change lives. I felt fulfilled and content. In the quiet solitude of my office, surrounded by the evidence of my hard work and good intentions, I was completely oblivious to the fact that my own life was in the process of being publicly and irrevocably dismantled. The storm had passed over my house, and I hadn't even felt the rain. The digital ink on the Foundation charter was barely dry when my world began to pixelate and break apart. I had sent the final approved documents to my legal team at 12:15 a.m. and leaned back in my chair with a deep, contented sigh. It was done. The Clara M. Ellison Foundation for Women in Technology was officially real. A wave of quiet, profound joy washed over me. This was what my success was for. This was the legacy I wanted to build. I stood up, stretched, and walked out of my office, a soft smile on my face. The house was silent. A single lamp was on in the living room, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. I assumed Leo and his friend Mark had finished their live stream and Mark had gone home. I peeked into his studio. The lights were off, the camera was dark. I figured he must have come to bed. I made my way to our bedroom, looking forward to sliding under the covers next to him, maybe whispering to him in the dark about how I'd finalized the foundation. But his side of the bed was empty, the sheets cool and undisturbed. A flicker of confusion passed through me. I checked the guest room where Mark sometimes stayed, but it was empty too. I pulled out my phone to text him, but before I could, the screen lit up with a notification. It was a text from Sarah. It was 12:21 a.m. My heart clenched. Sarah knew about my late-night work sessions. She wouldn't text me at this hour unless it was an emergency. The message itself was short, but every word landed like a stone in my gut. "You need to see this. I'm so sorry." Below the text was a link. My thumb hovered over it, a sudden, cold dread creeping up my spine. What could be so bad that it required such an ominous preamble? My mind raced through a dozen terrible possibilities: an accident, a family emergency. Never once did it land on the truth. My hand was trembling slightly as I tapped the link. It opened to a social media page, a short video clip already playing. It was a screen recording from Leo's livestream. The video was Gry. NY clearly captured by one of his viewers. Leo was on screen, leaning back in his chair, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand. His face was flushed, and his eyes had a loose, unfocused look. His friend Mark was laughing at something off-screen. The clip started mid-conversation. A comment from a viewer was pinned to the top of the screen. It read, "You're so lucky to be marrying Clara. She's a genius and so successful. You guys are gonna be a power couple." I watched as Leo read the comment aloud, a slow, condescending smirk spreading across his face. He chuckled, a low, thick sound. "Power couple," he repeated, as if the phrase was ridiculous. He looked directly into the camera, and in that moment it felt like he was looking straight at me, through the screen, through time, and seeing me for what I truly was to him: a convenience. "Let me tell you guys the real deal," he said, his voice slick with alcohol and an ugly arrogance I had never seen before. "You think I'm marrying her for what? Her mind? Her brilliant coding skills?" He laughed again, a harsh, dismissive sound that physically hurt to hear. Mark was chuckling beside him, egging him on. "No, guys, let's be real. I won the lottery, plain and simple." He took a long sip of his whiskey. "There's no deep, earth-shattering love. There isn't. There's no profound respect for her work. How can you respect something you don't even understand? It's just numbers and code. It's boring." The world tilted on its axis. My breath caught in my throat. I sank down onto the edge of the sofa, my phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline and a weapon all at once. He wasn't done. He leaned closer to the camera, a conspiratorial glint in his eyes. "She's a good person, sure, she's fine, but the money is incredible. The house, the cars, the freedom to do this." He gestured around the studio, full-time without having to worry about a thing. "That's the real marriage. That's the real prize. Love and respect, that's for poor people to worry about. I'm marrying for security, for the brand, and she's my ticket." He winked at the camera. "So yeah, I'm lucky. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I found a golden goose, and she has no idea." The clip ended. The silence that followed was deafening. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room, out of my lungs, out of my life. The smile I had worn just moments before felt like a relic from a different lifetime. The joy from my foundation work was gone, replaced by a hollow, cavernous ache in my chest. He had said it all. Every secret fear I had pushed down, every concern Sarah had ever voiced, every tiny red flag I had so diligently ignored, all of it was confirmed in a 45-second video clip that was now, undoubtedly, rocketing across the internet. He hadn't just said it, he'd broadcast it with a smug sense of pride. He didn't just feel this way, he was proud of it. He saw me as a golden goose. An easy mark. A ticket. Not a partner, not a love, not even a friend. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound, it was almost sublime in its cruelty. It wasn't a quiet affair or a hidden deception. It was a public execution of my character, my love, and my dignity, all for the entertainment of his online followers. And the most painful part was the look on his face, the utter lack of conflict, the casual, confident cruelty. He believed every word he said. My phone buzzed again, a text from Sarah. "Are you okay? Call me." I couldn't speak. I just sat there in the dark in the house he saw as a backdrop, replaying the video. The second time, I noticed the comments flying by on the side of the screen. Some were shocked. OMG, she's going to see this. But many were laughing with him. Get that bag, king. LMAO, he's so real for this. The ultimate gold digger. He wasn't just talking to his followers. He had found his people. And I was the price of his admission into their club. At that moment, the man I thought I was going to marry ceased to exist. In his place was a stranger, a con artist with a charming smile and a heart as hollow as a drum. And I, the brilliant architect of a multi-million-dollar app, had been his most gullible user. The immediate aftermath of watching the video was a strange, suspended moment of disbelief. My brain, the logical, problem-solving machine that had built my entire life, simply refused to process the data. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You see the metal twisting, the glass shattering, but the reality of the violence is too immense to grasp all at once. I sat on the sofa, the phone screen dark in my lap, and stared at the opposite wall, seeing nothing. I must have sat there for 10 minutes, maybe 20. The silence of the house was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating. Every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall sounded like a countdown. Then, a single, coherent thought pierced through the fog. I have to watch it again. I needed to be sure. I needed to see if I had imagined the sneer in his voice, the casual cruelty in his eyes. Maybe I had misinterpreted it. Maybe it was a joke that had landed badly. My mind, desperate for an alternative explanation, scrambled to build a defense for him. I picked up the phone, my fingers feeling clumsy and disconnected from my brain. I tapped the link. The video started again. Pinned comment, "You're so lucky to be marrying Clara." Leo's laugh. "You think I'm marrying her for, what, her mind?" This time, I didn't just hear the words, I analyzed them. The cadence, the tone, the micro-expressions on his face. There was no hint of jest. There was only the smug satisfaction of a man who believed he had outsmarted the world. I won the lottery, plain and simple. The finality of that statement hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't a complaint or a confession, it was a victory speech. There's no deep, earth-shattering love. There's no profound respect. My own words from a week ago came rushing back, my defense of him to Sarah. He expresses his happiness through extravagance. The memory was so clear it felt like Sarah was sitting next to me, giving me that sad, knowing look. The shame was a hot flush that crept up my neck. She had seen it. She had tried to warn me, and I had defended him. "Oh, she's my ticket." That was the word that broke me. Ticket. A disposable piece of paper you use to get somewhere. I wasn't a person to him. I was a vehicle. A means to an end. All the moments I had cherished as signs of our love, the proposal in Italy, the expensive ring, his support for my career, were all reframed in this horrifying new light. The proposal wasn't about us. It was about creating a story for his brand. The ring wasn't a symbol of commitment. It was an asset he had acquired with my money. His support was just him protecting his investment. A sob escaped my lips, a ragged, ugly sound that tore through the silence. It was quickly followed by another and another. The dam of shock finally broke and grief poured out, raw and overwhelming. I curled into a ball on the sofa, my body shaking with the force of my crying. It was a grief for the man I thought I knew, a grief for the future that had been a lie, and a grief for my own staggering foolishness. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen shut. The pain was so immense, so physical, that I felt like my bones were aching with it. Sometime during that storm of tears, my phone started ringing. The screen lit up with Sarah's name. I swiped to answer, but I couldn't form words. All that came out was a choked sob. "Clara, oh Clara, I'm coming over," she said, her voice firm and clear. "No, don't," I managed to whisper. He's not home yet." "I don't care," she said. "I'm 5 minutes away, unlock the door." Her decisiveness was an anchor in my swirling vortex of pain. I stumbled to the front door, my legs unsteady, and unlocked it. I returned to the sofa, wrapping a blanket around myself, though I was shivering from shock, not cold. Sarah let herself in, her face etched with worry. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't offer empty platitudes. She just sat down next to me, pulled me into her arms, and let me cry. She held me as I fell apart, her presence a silent testament to true friendship, a stark and painful contrast to the false love I had been so invested in. "What do I do?" I finally whispered into her shoulder, my voice hoarse. She pulled back slightly to look at me, her expression a mixture of fierce loyalty and deep sadness. "First, you breathe," she said softly. "Then you get angry. And then you make a plan. You are the CEO of your own life, Clara. You just discovered a catastrophic breach. Now we fix it." Her words, borrowing the language of my own professional world, cut through the emotional haze. A breach, that's what it was. A violation of the highest order. And she was right, I was not a victim. I was a founder, an architect, a problem solver. My life's work was about identifying bugs and eliminating them. And Leo was the biggest bug in my entire system. As Sarah made me a cup of tea, my mind started to shift. The overwhelming grief began to recede, replaced by a nascent, unfamiliar feeling, a cold, hard, clarifying anger. It was an anger at Leo for his deception, his greed, his cruelty. But it was also an anger at myself for being so willing to ignore the evidence, for wanting the fairy tale so badly that I had refused to read the fine print. I thought about him winking at the camera. I thought about him calling me his golden goose. The humiliation was still there, a burning coal in my stomach, but now it was fueling something else. Resolve. When I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway just before 2 a.m., I was no longer crying. I was sitting upright on the sofa, Sarah beside me, my teacup steady in my hands. The shock had solidified into a diamond-hard certainty. I knew, with an absolute clarity that I hadn't felt in months, exactly what I had to do. The unveiling was complete. I had seen the real Leo. Now it was his turn to see the real Clara. The front door opened, and Leo stumbled in, humming tunelessly to himself. He was still radiating a boisterous, alcohol-fueled energy. He didn't see me at first, his attention focused on kicking off his shoes in the foyer. What a night," he announced to the empty room. "The stream was fire. Mark and I killed it. I think I gained 1,000 new followers." He finally turned and saw me. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second when he noticed Sarah sitting beside me, a silent and imposing sentinel. His eyes flickered to my face, and his expression shifted from triumph to a vague, self-centered concern. "Hey, honey, you're still up," he said, his words slightly slurred. "Your eyes are all red. Were you crying? Did something happen with the foundation?" The question was so perfectly, unintentionally ironic that a bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. I held it in. I had decided in the last half hour, with Sarah as my witness, that this would not be a screaming match. It would not be a tearful, messy fight. It would be an exit interview. Professional. Final. "Leo, we need to talk," I said. My voice was unnaturally calm, flat, and devoid of the emotion that was churning inside me. He frowned, finally sensing that the atmosphere in the room was not celebratory. He glanced at Sarah, then back at me. "Okay, can Sarah maybe?" He trailed off, gesturing for her to leave. "Sarah stays," I said. It wasn't a request. Leo's demeanor shifted from confused to defensive. He puffed out his chest slightly, a peacock preening. "All right, what's going on? You're being weird." I didn't say anything. I just picked up my phone from the coffee table, unlocked it, and tapped the video. I didn't turn it to face him. I just played it. The sound of his own voice filled the silent room. "Power couple," the condescending laugh echoed off our high ceilings. Leo's face went through a rapid series of transformations. First, confusion, then dawning horror as he recognized the words. His skin, already flushed from alcohol, turned a pale, sickly white. He looked like he had been punched in the stomach. "Let me tell you guys the real deal." His eyes darted from the phone in my hand to my face, searching for, what? An explanation? Forgiveness. He looked like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar, his mind racing to formulate a lie. "I won the lottery, plain and simple." He flinched, as if his own words were striking him. No deep, earth-shattering love, no profound respect. He opened his mouth to speak, to interrupt, but I held up a single finger, my eyes locked on his, and he fell silent. I let the entire clip play, forcing him to listen to every last, damning word. "Oh, she's my ticket." The final, awful word hung in the air after the video ended. The silence that followed was thick with his shame and my pain. "Clara," he started, his voice a hoarse whisper. It was a joke. It was just content, you know how it is. You have to be edgy, you have to say shocking things to get views. "A joke," I repeated, my voice still quiet, but now laced with ice. "You stood in this house, a house I paid for, using equipment I paid for, and you told thousands of people that you don't love or respect me. You called me your ticket. Was that part of the joke, too?" "No, of course not," he said, taking a step toward me, his hands outstretched. "Baby, I was drunk. Mark and I were just riffing. It didn't mean anything. You know I love you." "No," I said, the words sharp and final. "I don't know that. For the past 2 years, I thought I knew that. But what I know now is what you just said when you believed I wasn't listening. That is the truth. The rest, the proposal, the wedding plans, the I love yous, that was the performance." Panic flared in his eyes. This was not going the way he had expected. He was used to me being accommodating, to me smoothing things over. He was not used to this cold, resolute stranger sitting before him. "That's not true," he insisted, his voice rising. "I do love you. I was just bragging to my friends. It was stupid guy talk. You're blowing this completely out of proportion." "Am I?" I asked. I stood up slowly, my movements deliberate. I felt strangely disconnected from my own body, like I was watching a character in a movie. I walked over to him, and he seemed to shrink back slightly. I held out my left hand, displaying the ridiculously large diamond ring he had been so proud of. "You said you had to show the world how much you loved me," I said, my voice trembling slightly for the first time. "But it was never about your love for me. It was about my money. This ring isn't a symbol of your love. It's a sim. All of my bank balance." With a steady hand, I pulled the ring off my finger. It felt surprisingly light. I had grown so used to its weight, its presence, that its absence was a relief. I looked at it for a moment in my palm, this glittering lie, and then I looked back at him. His eyes were wide with terror. He finally understood. I didn't throw it at him. I didn't make a grand, dramatic gesture. I simply placed it on the polished surface of the mahogany coffee table between us. It made a soft, definitive click. "The wedding is off, Leo," I said. "Everything is off." The color drained completely from his face. "What? No, Clara, you can't be serious," he stammered. "You can't just cancel a wedding over a stupid video." "I'm not," I said, turning to face him fully. "I'm canceling it because the foundation it was built on is a lie. The man I thought I was marrying doesn't exist. You do, and I'm not marrying you." He collapsed onto the armchair opposite the sofa, his head in his hands. "My life is over," he mumbled into his palms. "You're ruining my life." The sheer, unadulterated selfishness of that statement was breathtaking. Even now, his first thought was for himself, for his image, for the life he was about to lose. "No, Leo," I said, my voice hardening. "You ruined your own life. You just broadcast it live for the world to see. Now, I think it's time for you to leave. Sarah will stay here with me tonight." He looked up, his face a mask of desperation and disbelief. "Leave? Leave my house." "It was never your house," I said, the finality of the words hanging between us. "It was always my ticket." The first 24 hours after the confrontation were a blur of logistics and emotional fortification. The moment Leo finally grabbed a bag and left, his face pale and tear-streaked, a strange sense of calm descended upon me. The storm had passed, leaving behind a wreck, but the air was clear. With Sarah as my unwavering support, I began the systematic process of dismantling the life I had been building with him. The first call I made at 8 a.m. sharp was to our wedding planner. Her name was Victoria, a chic, efficient woman who had only ever interacted with Leo. Her cheerful, "Good morning, Clara. Leo has me so excited about the ice sculpture," was met with my calm, level voice. "Victoria, I'm calling to inform you that the wedding is cancelled. Permanently." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I see," she finally managed. "May I ask why?" "Leo and I have irreconcilable differences regarding the definition of marriage," I said, the words tasting like metal. "Please cancel all vendors immediately. Send me the final invoices for any non-refundable deposits. I will settle them." I knew, with a grim certainty, that I would be paying for a lavish ghost wedding that would never happen. It was a costly lesson, but one I was willing to pay to be free. Next, I called my parents. My mother answered, her voice warm and loving. Telling her was one of the hardest parts. I explained the situation simply, without the gory details of the video. "Mom, Leo and I aren't getting married. It's over. I discovered he wasn't being honest with me about why he wanted to marry me." My mother, a wise and gentle woman, didn't press for details. She just said, "Oh, Clara, my poor girl, your father and I are on our way." Their unconditional support was a balm on my raw nerves. Calling his parents was another matter entirely. His mother answered, and when I told her, her reaction was not one of support, but of immediate, panicked defense of her son. "What do you mean canceled?" she asked, her voice shrill. "Leo loves you, what did you do?" The accusation, so swift and unfair, almost knocked the wind out of me. "I didn't do anything, Mrs. Evans," I said, my voice colder now. "Your son, however, told a very large audience that he was only marrying me for my money. I have it on video. The wedding is off. I suggest you talk to him." I hung up before she could respond, my hand trembling with anger. Throughout the day, Sarah was my rock. She fielded calls from concerned friends, updated my social media to a simple, dignified statement. "Due to personal circumstances, the wedding of Clara Ellison and Leo Evans has been canceled. I ask for privacy at this time," and made endless cups of tea. She also put me in touch with a lawyer to handle the more complex aspects of our separation. The most difficult task was disentangling our finances. With Sarah's guidance, I logged into my bank accounts. It was horrifying to see the extent of Leo's spending. Thousands of dollars on designer clothes, gadgets, and subscription services for his brand. I systematically removed his access from every joint account, canceled his supplementary credit cards, and transferred the remaining funds into new, sole proprietor accounts. I felt like I was cleaning a virus out of my system. Then came the texts and calls from Leo. They started as pleading. "Clara, please, we can fix this. I'll do anything. I'll delete my social media. We can go to therapy." When I didn't respond, the tone shifted to anger. "You're really doing this? You're throwing away 2 years of our lives over one stupid mistake. You're cold, Clara. You've always been cold." Then came the manipulation. My mom called me, crying, "You're tearing our families apart. Don't you care about anyone but yourself?" I read each message, and with every word, my resolve hardened. The man I thought I loved was a chameleon, shifting his colors to whatever he thought would get him what he wanted. There was no core, no substance, just a desperate, grasping need. By the evening, the online world had caught up. The clip of Leo's confession had gone from being a piece of niche influencer drama to a full-blown viral sensation. But now, it had a new, explosive piece of context. The rich fiancé had seen it and immediately dumped him. My name was trending. His name was trending. Hashtags like "Gold Digger Leo" and "Ticket Cancelled" were everywhere. People who had been laughing with him a day before were now tearing him apart. His comment sections, once filled with praise, became a raging inferno of mockery and disgust. His follower count, which he had been so proud of, began to plummet. Someone had found the wedding website and posted the link. Strangers were leaving comments in the digital guest book. "Congratulations on dodging that bullet, Clara. Leo, hope the brand was worth it." He had wanted a public wedding, and in a way, he got one. It was a public execution of his character, and the whole world had a front row seat. His world, the carefully curated digital reality he had poured all his energy into, was falling apart in real time. Brands that had sponsored him posted statements distancing themselves from him. Other influencers made videos reacting to the drama, analyzing his downfall. He had wanted to be a famous influencer. He had succeeded, but for all the wrong reasons. He had become a meme, a cautionary tale. I watched it happen with a strange sense of detachment. There was no joy, no feeling of revenge. It was like watching a building demolish itself. He had laid the charges himself, lit the fuse, and then acted surprised by the explosion. The sadness I felt was not for him, but for the woman who had loved him so blindly, who had been so willing to fund her own destruction. That woman was gone now, and I was just beginning to figure out who was left in her place. A month passed. The digital noise faded, as it always does, moving on to the next fleeting drama. Leo disappeared from the internet. His accounts were deactivated, his online presence scrubbed clean. The house was quiet again, but this time it was a peaceful, cleansing silence. My parents had come and gone, leaving behind a restocked fridge and a home filled with warmth and love. Sarah was a constant, steady presence, checking in every day, her friendship a quiet reassurance that genuine connection was real. The process of disentangling our lives was formally complete. My lawyer had handled the few remaining legal threads. The cars were the last piece of the puzzle. The sporty coupe Leo had been so proud of was in my name. I had the keys delivered to his parents' house with a simple note: "He can keep it. Consider it a severance package." I didn't want it. I didn't want any material object that would remind me of his greed. I sold my own ostentatious SUV and bought the same model of reliable sedan I used to drive. Driving, it felt like coming home to myself. One crisp autumn evening, Sarah came over with a bottle of wine and takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. We sat on the back patio, overlooking the yard that I had once dreamed would be filled with the laughter of my future children. For the first time, the thought didn't bring a pang of grief. It just felt neutral, a different path not taken. "How are you doing?" Sarah asked, her voice gentle. "For real." I took a sip of wine and considered the question. "I'm okay," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was the truth. The anger is gone, mostly. Now it just feels sad. It's sad that he was so empty inside that he thought money was a substitute for love. And it's sad that I was so eager to be loved that I accepted such a poor imitation of it. "You weren't foolish, Clara," Sarah said, as if reading my mind. "You were hopeful, you were trusting. Those are good qualities. He's the one who weaponized them, not you." I knew she was right. For weeks, I had been blaming myself, combing through every memory, every red flag, berating myself for my blindness. But now, with distance, I could see it more clearly. I hadn't been a fool, I had been a target. His deception was not a reflection of my inadequacy, but of his own character deficit. The foundation officially awarded its first 3 scholarships last week, I said, changing the S. Object, a genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like an eternity. I met the recipients on a video call. They are brilliant, Sarah, so full of passion and ideas. One of them wants to develop AI to help with early-stage medical diagnostics. "That's incredible, Clara," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "That's a real legacy." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The backdrop that Leo had been so obsessed with was, in the end, just a beautiful view. It didn't need to be curated or monetized. It just needed to be appreciated. The experience with Leo had been a crucible. It had burned away the naive parts of me, the parts that wanted a fairy tale so badly I was willing to ignore the glaring faults in the story. It had hurt. It had been a deep, humiliating, and profound pain. But in the ashes, something stronger was forged. I had learned to trust my own judgment, to listen to that quiet inner voice that had been trying to warn me all along. I had learned the difference between support and enablement, between a partner and a parasite. My wealth had made me a target, but it did not define me. My work defined me. My friendships defined me. My desire to make a positive impact on the world defined me. Leo had tried to take my money and my dignity. He had failed at both. He was left with nothing, while I, who had lost a fiancé and a fantasy, felt richer than ever. I had my integrity, my friends, my family, and a future that was now a blank slate, waiting for me to write a new, more honest story. To anyone out there who might be listening to my story and seeing reflections of your own life, I want you to know this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The red flags are not decorations, they are warnings. Your intuition, that quiet feeling in your gut that something isn't right, is the most honest advisor you will ever have. It's not cynical to protect your heart and your peace, it's wise. You are the architect of your own life, and you deserve to build it on a foundation of truth, with people who love and respect every part of you, not just the parts they can benefit from. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you are just a ticket to their destination. You are the destination.